All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rebranded Athlete podcast. We're back again. This is week 2 of going live, and I've got another great guest lined up for you. And just as before, remember, it is different than just listening to the traditional podcast. You guys actually have an opportunity to interact with us. So I encourage you, if you're listening through Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, to go ahead and leave comments, leave us questions. We'd love to have you be part of the conversation today. And again, feel comfortable to be part of this conversation. So another reminder too, make sure you follow the Rebranded Athlete podcast. Also on YouTube, make sure that you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode, a live notification, or even the replays afterwards. So without further ado, we're going to dive in today. And today's guest and I actually go way back. And we didn't realize it until a couple of months ago when the power of social media, and you guys hear me talk about this all the time, there are so many ways for us to connect. And we just met, but not really, because about 20 years ago, we competed against one another. So
was it 20?
Oh God, I know. I think I just dated myself, Susan. But without further ado, this is Susan Forbes from Next Level Ready. Welcome, Susan. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to chat and get to know your audience a little bit and talk all about college sports and life after sports and getting to college sports and everything.
So. Yes. And, I think it's just so great that we were able to, I guess, reconnect, even though, I don't think you and I ever spoke a word when we were competing other than, hey, she's going for the slide or the blocking assignment or whatnot. But why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you, starting maybe with how you got involved in volleyball and then all the way up to what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. How I got involved in volleyball. I don't know. The volleyball bug hit me early on.
You and me both.
I grew up in a community that had a long-standing tradition of a very strong volleyball program. They had won, I think, league for 20 years. By the time I got there, they've continued that tradition. So my mom exposed us to a lot of different sports growing up, and I just loved it from the start. I couldn't wait until 5th grade, where I could be on the try out for a club team, because it's so hard. I think they start them earlier now, but at the time it was like the ball's bigger than your head, and it's hard to
so true.
The little tiny, 6, 7, 8-year-old. So I waited for the day I could play, and I just I loved it. I got involved early. Funny thing is, my mom was the high school varsity basketball coach. Both my parents played college basketball, and I refused to play. I just didn't like it. So,
too much running or what?
Oh yeah, running. It was for sure the running. Volleyball, I could jump, transition, have a few moments that were hard and difficult to get through, but the running, I am not a fan of that. So, anyways, I happen to be tall as well. I'm 6'2", so that helped me in my volleyball journey, and was able to get connected with a great club that turned into opportunities to play in college. And I had no idea what I was looking for in a school. If it was a top 25 school and you were interested in me, I was interested in you. So it worked out for me, but I feel very blessed and lucky that it did. I ended up going to University of the Pacific in Stockton. At the time they were like the number 8 team in the nation, and it checked a lot of boxes for me. And so played there for 4 years. That's where we played against you guys in the Big West at Cal State Fullerton, and had an amazing college experience, but I think also a very challenging one, like many athletes do. So that's kind of my story around volleyball, and we could talk about life after sports, or I'll let you take the lead.
And such a prestigious program to go to. I remember every time going to Pacific, like we were just, I don't know, there's just a feeling about that gym every single time. I don't know if it's because it was the sport court or, the band was always playing there, but you guys always, or if it was the Eye of the Tiger song, because, I know you guys always came out to that, but.
Yeah, no, that's funny. The first time I went up to that school, they were hosting, it was a preseason tournament. I don't think they do it anymore, but the whole the whole Spano Center was sold out. Like the first time I saw a
Wow.
volleyball match there, and I was like, okay, this is what I want.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
No, definitely. And, were you recruited to, any other top schools during the time? Like, do you have a hard
Um,
time narrowing down to Pacific as well?
yeah, that's a good question. I was recruited to some other schools like UC Irvine, Oregon State, Miami. I went on an official visit to University of Missouri, but again, I had no idea what I was looking for.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah,
I was either Pac-12, I wanted to play in the Pac-12 because that was such a competitive conference, or I wanted to
mhm.
go top 25. And so those schools that had that as their offer to me is what I became interested in. But I also really didn't participate in my recruiting process. That's what I do now is I encourage my clients and athletes to do specific things throughout the process to set themselves up for success. But I had no idea what I was doing. I just hoped that college coaches emailed me and that they noticed me and that if I was
Yeah.
interested in them, I'd email them back. And I didn't, I wonder, I think what my options could have looked like had I had somebody like holding my hand. But again, I loved my experience. I won't say I regret anything and it didn't work out for me because it did, but I learned a lot through it.
Yeah, and I just looking back, I don't even maybe it's because I didn't know of it, but I really
Mhm.
don't think there were resources, for
No.
athletes
Mhm.
and probably like the work that you're doing right now to help them get to that next level. And even for me, like I was the only one in my family to have gone through that recruiting process. So I had nobody
Mhm.
to really lean into except my club coach. I was pretty much taking his guidance, but
Right.
to make a major decision like that and have so many different opportunities, going to different universities or playing for different programs. And I think
Mhm.
kind of alluding to what you're saying, like not really knowing who you are, like making
Mhm.
sure that things align because at the end of the day, you're picking something that is really going to shape you for the
Yes.
next portion of your life. And it's a big decision to make at such a young age.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. And there was a big trend there for a while, with freshman, sophomore athletes for volleyball. Like that was the norm. If you were a top athlete, you were committed freshman, sophomore year. The NCAA
Right.
has passed a lot of rules to slow that down, which I think is good. And like with any rule, there's good things to it and bad things to it. But yeah, at the time too, it was. I can't imagine being a freshman, committing to a school and then getting ready for the next 3 or 4 years to show up on that campus. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was a late commit, which I think worked in my favor, being able to understand a little bit more about what I might be wanting.
Right. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
definitely a big decision to make at such a young
Yes,
age. And
yes.
so do you feel like your experience with all that has led you to the work that you're doing today with athletes?
Yeah, so, going through the recruiting process, having been a college athlete, and then coming out of that, I've always loved college sports and college athletics, and not quite knowing exactly what I wanted to do when I was done being an athlete. I dabbled in a lot of things. I was a head coach for a Division III program, women's volleyball program, and then I worked in marketing and promotions for athletics, but basically, then I was a mom, became a mom, started having babies. And as a fun side job, I helped girls get recruited to play college volleyball for a club in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
And I loved it. It was really fun. And what I found was because I had kind of stayed very closely connected to college sports and to volleyball through, coaching and being in club and all those kinds of things, I ended up knowing a lot of coaches who were college. All my friends in college, many of them went on to become college coaches. So
Yeah.
it was a very easy connection to make to, okay, I can talk with them and ask them, what is it that you're looking for in athletes? How is it that they should be contacting you? Having all those easy conversations because they were my friends and then being able to relay that information to the athletes really was able to work in my favor. But I think too, now as a life coach, in the last year, I have embarked on a certification journey to become a life coach. And what I'm really wanting to do is help athletes prepare themselves for those expectations at the next level. That, it's great to want to be a college athlete and to become a college athlete, but what exactly does that mean? And what are you signing up for? And how are we preparing you for that? Because when I kind of considered this whole life coaching thing and wanting to go back to school, what I was noticing was all the headlines around college sports today and the mental health and wellness of athletes and the struggle, that was
Yeah.
apparent there. And it brought me back to my transition out of sport. And I knew that that was becoming a hotter topic of, okay, these athletes go 4 years and then what then? Their whole identity's wrapped up in it. They're kind of lost. They don't know what to do. And we're kind of like a high and by, like, thank you so much
Yes.
for those 4 years of incredibly hard work and, some of the best years of your life. And now good luck. Like, you got your degree, good luck.
Exactly.
And I started thinking then about my experience of helping girls get recruited. And I felt kind of convicted that, like, you know what? We do it on that level too. We do it from high school, being like, okay, good luck. You're committed. Go have fun at the college
Go
level,
ahead. Mhm.
and hopefully we got some good resources for you there. And I think that we're really good at getting kids to the next level, and the club I'm at is very, good at that, and so, as so many clubs are, and we just expect that they're going to be taken care of and that they will learn what they need to when they're there. And so I kind of thought, like, athletes in a sense get, the high and by twice. They get it from their transition into becoming a college athlete and then out of becoming a college athlete. And so I thought the way I can help is by better preparing them and giving them the mindset skills and mental tools and things like that to be able to maintain their success as a college athlete, hoping that that also trickles over into their transition out of sport too. So
Right.
that was a big whirlwind of how I'm doing what I'm doing, but that's the
Yeah,
why.
no, it's
Yeah.
incredible work and it's definitely so much needed. And what you said as well too, it's like, what are you really signing up for? And I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we're like, yeah, we want to get that jersey and we're part of this team, but we really don't know what we don't know, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
full-time commitment, when you're signing up,
Mm-hmm.
especially to play at an elite level. You're talking I even remember with our coaches sometimes, it's I believe it was the every 7 days you have to have the day off, and there was like
Mm-hmm.
ways that they would just push so that we are just maxed out, not only physically, but I think what really takes a toll on elite athletes is the mental aspect. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember that being such a huge difference between the high school club play and then when I got
Mm-hmm.
into being a collegiate player. Like, that was the biggest thing that I saw, besides a lot of the girls were taller and bigger than I was, than what I was accustomed to before, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that being the biggest hurdle. And if we're not equipped with the tool set to be able to handle that mental aspect of it, we can
Mm-hmm.
really go inward and start to get into our own heads. And then our performance starts to, lack. And then our confidence goes, like, all these different things. And even for myself, like I had a point, I think it was my junior year, actually. It was a springtime tournament. We were playing at UC Santa Barbara. It was like the last tournament before spring break. And I had an outer body experience. I don't know if have you ever had
Mm-hmm.
something like that where you're like literally
When you were
almost watching
competing,
yourself? Yes,
when
when I was
you,
competing. So
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what had happened, but it even went back to the basics. I remember trying to go up to, swing at the
Oh,
ball and I couldn't even do it. So that kind of
yeah,
mental thing played with me for a
yeah,
while. And
yeah.
luckily, we had a great sports psychologist at the time. His name was Ken
That's
Reviza,
awesome.
and I worked with him and was able to get back on track. But I just remember that being like one of the times where I was so in my head because, my mental game wasn't where it should have been. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we the athletes, when they reach that next level, when they become a committed athlete, before they show up at that school for practice or, the first day of school and things like that, their circumstances have completely changed. So they have, maybe they're one of the best players on their team at the time, which is why
Right.
they were able to create that roster opportunity for
Mhm.
themselves. They have mom and dad behind them, they have coaches, high school and club coaches that believe in them, possibly a whole community that's been like, oh, this is going to be so amazing. You're going to go on and
Right.
play at this certain school. And, teammates of theirs that they may have played with for the last, depending on how long, like 4 to 6 years, at least a few years. And they're leaving all of that whole network, that whole circumstance of support, and coming in to a team where everybody's the best.
Right.
Everybody was that best
Yes.
player. You only know your college coach through the recruiting process where, unless you're asking really tough questions about how they're running the program, they've just told you what they want you to hear. And you multiply that by all the girls going through the same process at the same time, the expectations getting greater because, hey, you're here now, but what's the goal now too is also something I struggled with was I did it. I achieved that goal of playing for a top 25 program. And I remember being very confused my freshman year as to like, well, what now? Because I'm on this really good team. Sure, I could try and start, but at the time it was, a little bit unrealistic. And so what am I supposed to, everything you worked up towards is now it's been done and it's accomplished. And that feeling of that happiness doesn't necessarily last and carry you through those next 4 years. So just that in of itself, that we don't necessarily prepare them for like, hey, this is going to, like everything
Right.
you've known is going to completely change and it's going to be up leveled and the expectations are going to go up. How are you going to handle that? And I think a lot of athletes just think, well, I'm just going to work hard. Like that's what I've always done. That's how I
Right.
created this opportunity for myself in the first place. And I argue that your skills get you to the next level, but it's your mindset and your mental tenacity that keeps you there and maintains your success. And that if you're not paying attention to that, your skills are only going to get so far. At some point, you're going to have to up level your mindset and your thinking to be able to do what you want to do at that next level.
Absolutely. And you have
That's
to
growing
rise
in.
to that occasion,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
again, like coming in as the all-star player from your high school team to the college level and then having to sit the bench because not because you did anything wrong, but because, there's other people who are kicking it up a notch. And so it
Mhm,
allows you to have to rise to that occasion as well. And I think for those of us who were the star players, like it's a hard pill to swallow, when
mhm,
you
mhm.
finally you're like, okay, well now I got to figure out something different and
Yeah.
figure out a different way than before. And then on top of that, it's like different coaching too. I don't know if you had
Mhm,
some difficulty with that. I also had to relearn like a different coaching style
mhm,
than what you had
mhm.
been accustomed to for the last 4 years before getting into college. So yeah,
Well,
definitely these
yeah.
conversations aren't happening.
No, no, and, yeah, I mean, different expectations too about like, "Okay, you've been hitting the ball this way for the last 4 years, we're gonna change that."
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I
"Hey,
remember
wait, I
they
thought you
changed my
liked the way I hit
yeah,
the ball." You
they
know?
they completely changed my footwork too when I got
Yeah,
there. And I was like, "What do you mean I gotta hit the ball like this?" Like, no.
yeah, and, the grind is
Yeah.
also different too. You go from I mean, in high school, sure, maybe you're having 2-hour practices every day and some tournaments on the weekend, and then club is maybe, 2 or 3 practices a week, but the grind of college is like, 3-hour practices, 4 to 5 days a week, high level competition,
Yes.
matches are out of 5.
Yes,
And then you throw
exactly.
travel on top of that and college studies. And again, I'm just like shocked that we're just like, good luck.
Yep, figure it out, figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about your transition out of sports. First of all, did you know that it was time to move on? Did you have any aspirations of going pro with
Mhm.
volleyball?
Yes, I did. So my story around that is when I was a senior, I started dating my husband.
Oh, nice.
And the funny thing is he ended up redshirting. He's a year and a half younger than me, 2 years behind in school, but because he redshirt, it looked like the senior was dating the freshman.
Oh no.
So I had like this, oh man, like I love this guy and I think this could be like a forever kind of thing. So do I stay here and kind of figure out where this is going to go or do I go and play, play pro, play collegiately? And that was a really tough decision. I chose to stay because I just wanted to see, like, okay, is this what I think it's going to be? And, are we going to get married and have babies and do all the things? And so at the time I chose to stay. And that was really, it was a crazy time because he was still an athlete. I was no longer an athlete. And, that isolation, I think, that you feel when you're no longer a part of this team and this
Right.
community on campus that you're a part of for so long. It was interesting because he was still a part of it. And yet I wasn't. And so that first year was really difficult, of feeling like, where do I belong and where do I fit in? And I mean, it's not like I was being excluded, but you just feel a little different. You're
Yeah.
graduating. You don't want to be like the pity invite to the outing. You want, like, people to want to hang out with you, and you're not crossing paths on campus like you used to. And so that was really, really difficult. It was also like during, like, it was 2006, so the economy was just kind of starting to tank. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my degree. It was in sport management, and so I actually got a job working at a finance and investment firm. And the whole reason why I got the job is because I told him I told my boss I would coach his daughter's volleyball team.
Oh man. Hey, perks, right?
And
That's
so
great.
I had no idea what I was doing, this investment firm. It was really difficult. So after really struggling for that year, I decided, okay, my, future husband, or, my boyfriend, my partner, has another 2 years to go. I don't think I can continue to just hang around for him for the next year. So I decided to apply to grad school and get my master's degree. And then I was able to get a grad assistantship with the athletic department, and work on my master's degree in student development and higher education, knowing that I eventually wanted to work with college athletes. So that's kind of my transition out of sports story. But it's also funny because I was also dating a current athlete, also being on staff in the athletic department.
Right. So you were still kind of in the sports world.
Yeah, I was still in the sports. It was just a really very confusing time. Very
Yeah.
confusing time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel yourself kind of experiencing, that loss of
Yeah.
yourself as the player? And then because like for myself, I was Sarah the volleyball player, and that's who I
Mhm.
attached my identity to. Did you
Mhm.
find that too, that you were Susan the volleyball player and you didn't know what was next?
Yeah, I mean, just like, this is what I've done and this is what I do. And it was just like a what now? And like
Mhm.
I had no idea that it was going to be difficult.
Mm.
I think I just thought, I'll just do the next thing. I'll get the job and I'll start the career, and I'll still see people, but I had no idea that it was going to feel like such like a loss and almost like a grieving over my former life. Um, so, and then the crazy thing is I noticed that about myself. I noticed I had a hard transition. I started, a lot of my high school friends that were college athletes, we kind of would see each other every once in a while and talk about it. And I started seeing that I wasn't alone in that. And that's actually what I did my master's thesis on
Mm.
for my degree, was the transition out of sport for female student athletes, and how so much of student development and higher education is to help you move through these certain, vectors of helping you figure out who you are and who you want to become, and helping you establish your identity. And for an athlete, every single one of those things that a normal college student moves through is like this with athletics and who they are in athletics. And it's hard to
Right.
establish an identity outside of that, just simply based on the time that you're putting in the sport. All your relationships are literally,
Right.
closest
Mhm.
relationships are involved on your team or with other athletes. And so as I started learning about student development theory and higher education, and then knowing my experience, I started going like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense why this was such a struggle, because I had gone through all these, developmental vectors, or, pillars or transitions. And for me, every single one of them was tied to who I was as an athlete.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because I think we all feel like we're the only ones going through it at the
Mhm,
time.
mhm,
And maybe just because the conversations, weren't there. I know, more now, so there's more conversations about the transition out of sport, but when we were playing, there wasn't. And
mhm.
literally it was like, for me, it was like, here's your jersey and your frame. Thank you very much for your service and on your way. And there was never
Yeah.
any talk about like, they asked you what's your plan next. And like everybody, oh, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get a job or whatever. But there was no plan for what are you going to do without your sport now? Like, how do you transition to staying an active, athlete, not having to work out, 3 to 4 hours a day like you were before, but leading that active lifestyle and just still continuing to grow as a person. And just because that part of your life was over, it doesn't mean your life's over. Like there's other things to transition into. And for people that hold such a close identity to that, I think that's why, there is so much, when it comes to like mental health with athletes as well, because we do attach ourselves so much to our sport because it's all we've known. And like you mentioned, all my friends were on my team. Even for my parents, like my parents' close friends were the parents of other players because we spent so much time together, whether it was those club tournaments, all day, all night, traveling, all kinds of stuff. Like that's what we've always done. So and just trying to navigate that loss. Did you have anybody that you could talk to besides, the potential husband in the works?
No. And I mean, it's like he couldn't really quite understand it because he was still a part of it.
Right.
No, I think I just thought something was wrong with me, that how wimpy of me to not be able to just move on, and just kind of get over it. And as you were talking too, I realized I had looked so forward to my spring senior year because I wasn't going to have to practice for 3 or 4 hours a day. I wasn't going to have to do all the things, that we were doing as athletes, and thinking to myself like, wow, I'm going to get to be like a normal college student. This is going to be so bizarre to like what goes on from the hours of 1 to 7 on campus,
Right.
And I think I was so thinking that it was going to be such an amazing thing that I'd almost like, it never occurred to me that it could also be difficult because all I saw was like freedom in a sense,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that
Yeah.
because it is like a glimpse of freedom. And I think only because we have been so bound to everything that is required of us at that level. Like I remember just wanting a day off and like, yes, like I could be normal like everybody else because we're so bound by what we do. We know exactly what time we have to be, pre-game stuff, pre-practice, after practice, like all this different stuff. And then that's probably why athletes have a hard time with it too, because we go from all this structure to no structure. And that's where bad things start to happen when you don't have any structure behind it.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, transition story, and of all the guests I've had on here, very common commonalities, same type of thing. People thought that they were alone, didn't feel like, that they felt like they were the only ones going through it, didn't really know how to get support or even really talk about it until later in life. So that's what this podcast is all about. That's why, we talk about our stories. So moving into like the life lessons through athletics, I know you're big time into mindset work. Are there some things that you learned during your time as an athlete that you apply to what you do today or even your everyday life?
I think looking back, I can be incredibly grateful for my experience as an athlete and who it made me become and what I had to overcome and what I showed up for every day, even on the days that I didn't feel like it. And um, now being, in the normal world, non-athletic world, and having friends, we're never college athletes, and things like that. My husband and I laugh because when you hang out with a former athlete, that they just kind of like get it, like there's a little bit something different about them, and I think that now I can look back and say, everything that I overcame and everything that I learned and see the benefit in that challenge and the beauty in that growth, and that it was about more than what I even thought it was about. And that now as an entrepreneur, showing up and being able to do the hard things when I don't feel like it,
Yeah.
get the work done, set goals, be just one of those weird, driven people that that is always like wanting to set the bar higher and higher. People are like, okay, good job. But so I think that the time management, is huge. I get made fun of a lot for being an incredibly punctual person with all of my, my mom friends and stuff. I'm like, no, but you don't understand. It's just like what I do, because if
Yeah.
I didn't, there was consequences to that. So, yeah, and I think now that's what I work with my clients a lot with is it's not necessarily about getting the goal. It's not necessarily about becoming the college athlete or about having finished, your career as a college athlete, but rather than thinking that like that one thing's going to make you happy, like being committed or having that college degree or getting the job offer, that's not necessarily like lasting. Those feelings come and go as they do with life and all the ups and downs of
Right.
life. It's like Christmas morning, the time leading up to Christmas is really amazing. And then Christmas comes and you're like, this feels amazing, but like it goes away. You can't hold on to
Right.
that. And so I encourage my clients and, current clients with even college athletes of like, focus on what the process is making you become. Who are you having to up level and be in order to do the things that you're doing now? And that's actually like the golden nugget, not the degree, not the commitment, but it's who you're becoming as you're showing up as a college athlete, as you're showing up, and writing an email to a college coach, even though you're just told no, right? You're developing tenacity, you're developing persistence, you're developing writing skills, you're developing all these things through what you're trying to accomplish that are going to serve you in the long run, that I think really go unrecognized as athletes. We just think, well, everybody does them. Like everybody shows up to practice when they don't feel like it, but they don't. And
Right.
it's a unique thing for athletes that we don't give ourselves credit for, is who has being an athlete made me become, how have I had to up level, and seeing that and knowing that that journey and that the hardship and everything that came with it is worth those skills and that those life lessons alone.
I love that. And
Yeah.
the journey itself, like the journey is so powerful because you may finally get to your destination, but it's not all about that, right? Like
Right.
it's about who you became in the process, like you said,
Mhm.
and who you've
Mhm.
grown to become. Because
Right.
you can get championships, you can get awards or whatnot, to be recognized for your work, but that doesn't include that. It's like a snapshot of what you
Mhm.
did in order to get that achievement.
Mhm.
I love that
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
much. And I
Yeah.
think us as athletes, like going back to your comment about being like the entrepreneur and, having that skill set, I really think that athletes have such a great advantage, not only if they're going to be entrepreneurs, but even leaders in their industry, because we have
Mhm.
all these things that we have been ingrained with for so many years.
Mhm. Yeah, I
of,
mean, teamwork too.
yes, showing up
Everything.
on time. I mean, on time for us was 15 minutes before
Yeah.
we had to be there,
Mhm.
just like all these
Mhm.
things that
Yeah, exactly. And
that
I subscribe to the thought too that I share with my clients a lot is like, no matter what you do, what you accomplish, what level you achieve, life is always going to be 50% good and 50%
Mhm.
challenging. And that just because you get the degree or transfer to a school that you think is better, or you end up committing to, your dream school, that is like because of the nature of life, it's not going to all of a sudden make your life 60% better, right? Your
Right,
life as a college athlete is still going to come with 50%, challenging things and 50% awesome things. And that even if you had $1 million, you would still experience those ups and downs of life.
right,
And so, then people say, well, why achieve things? Why go after the goal then if I don't make my life any more happy? And the answer is because of who you become by achieving the
exactly.
goal and what it makes of you, and that confidence, that you're able to get, and because it's fun. Right? It's fun to go after things and push yourself outside of the box. So yeah, I think that when you consider that life is, never just because you have achieved something or not, it doesn't automatically make your life a certain percentage better. You're always going to end up 50% good, 50% bad. And so you do it for other reasons of, being disappointed that it didn't
Right.
add all this stuff to your life.
Yeah, and you just never stop learning, right? Because that's part of it, I think, on our journey. When we actually set a goal and go for it, like, we're learning in the process. And if you don't, I
Mhm.
mean, think about how boring life would be if we're not challenging each other or
Yeah. Oh,
ourselves
for
for that
sure.
matter.
For sure. Yeah.
We would
I
just
mean,
be
I've
existing. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I have a comment that came through from James, said that this is so informative. I really appreciate how you tie the skills acquired as a student athlete as transferable to aspects of life after sports. It's so true. And I think that's part of realizing, what we were able to do at such an elite level and how it transfers over to life. Like it doesn't end with the game. Like
Mhm.
really, I think
Mhm.
we're all fortunate enough that our sport, our fields, the court, wherever we're playing, that actually gets to be our playground, and we get to explore life through our
Yeah.
sports. And then
Yeah.
we get to apply it to our next level. And
Yeah. I'm
James
happy.
also,
Oh,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I'm happy I got to learn those lessons in a safe environment of literally playing a game. Like,
Right.
imagine
Yeah.
learning some of those lessons and you get fired over it, or you hurt
Yeah.
someone incredibly because you decided
Right.
to not show up, to something that was important to them. And so we got to learn it by playing a game, which is
Yes.
like really
Yes.
cool when you think about it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we're very fortunate in that sense.
Yeah.
We had that arena to do so.
Yeah.
And then he
Mhm.
says my top six: time management, work ethic, teamwork, communication skills, motivation, and resiliency. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree. Those
definitely.
are those are definitely all great skills that do transfer over. And again, whether you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur, or you go and work for somebody else, these are definitely traits that people are looking for. I call them, like, it's the golden skill set, right? Like, these are the golden things that people look for. And
Mhm.
that's why I believe athletes have the ability to change the world. And why? Because of these types of skill sets. Like,
Mhm.
imagine if everybody came to work like with
Oh,
this
yeah.
set already. Like,
Oh,
how awesome would our world be?
yeah. I mean, dependability too. I would add dependability onto that list because
Mhm.
you are consistent and people can rely and depend on you, and they know that if you say you're going to be somewhere, you're probably going to be somewhere because that's been ingrained in us. It's not like
Yes.
I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to go.
Right, especially the days we don't feel like showing up. I think,
Mhm.
our coaches definitely instilled that in us. We don't care
Mhm.
how you feel, you are showing up today,
Oh yeah.
no
Oh
matter
yeah.
what.
Yeah. You got a cold, tough it
Oh,
out.
yeah. No, none of the sweat it out. Yeah, so, before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit more about, like, your program that you're offering. What's your coaching all about so our listeners know how they can,
Yeah, sure.
hear what you're
Yeah.
doing?
So I work with current college athletes right now. So athletes that are, struggling to adjust to life at the next level, manage all those expectations. Are wondering, what's next. Now I'm here, and I'm not really quite sure how to reset my goals, things like that. Work with those athletes. Also, athletes that are considering transferring have kind of been athletes that I've been able to, I think, bring some value and clarity and help too. And, you're wanting to
Great.
transfer your ups, you're not happy where you're at, and helping them figure out their reasons for transferring and if they like them. And if it is, is it fear-based and feeling like I'm not good enough to be here and you're afraid of the work you're going to need to up level, or is it actually a situation that you're going to have a hard time managing your mind through for the next few years? And so it's helping them figure out their reasons for transferring and if they like them for them. I'm not invested, in their success and having them get to a certain point. So I'm a very neutral sounding board, I think, where they can figure out what they think might be best for them. And then in regards to helping athletes get to the next level, I work with volleyball players because that's the sport I know and the sport I'm
No
well,
surprise.
well connected with. And so I have private clients who, if they need help in the recruiting process, they can work with me. But I don't just say these are the things you need to do. It's more like you want to be a college athlete, let's figure out why, and let's figure out your reasons for wanting to be a college athlete, and what are you looking for? What is it that you're valuing in your college experience? And let's go after, those schools. And then I kind of teach you how to create that opportunity. And then I also am launching a group program. So if you don't necessarily want the private one-on-one help, or maybe you're a younger athlete, like a freshman, sophomore, and you just want to know, hey, how does this work? How do I create opportunity for myself? I have a group program. I'm calling it the Recruiting Crew. So it's going to be
Oh, I
like,
love it.
yeah, group Zoom calls. And I tell you, what to be doing in your recruiting process. And of course, we talk about mindset. And the cool thing about the recruiting process is there's a lot of ups and downs that come with it. There's a lot of resiliency that has to be learned. There's a lot of putting yourself out there, feeling insecure, all those kind of things that are life lessons to be worked through, or, get support in general. And so we use the recruiting process to do some life coaching as well, and help girls overcome, their limiting beliefs and what they think is possible for them. And hopefully helping them create a lot of opportunity at the next level, so that they can have a choice in what they want to do and where they want to play.
You've been busy put together.
I'm like, how much time do you have? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I know. That's great.
No, it's really
in
cool.
such different offerings too, like to meet the athletes where they're at. And I think also like the transferring, opportunity that you have to really work with the athletes on that, to figure out what it is. Cause sometimes it is, they're just scared. Maybe
Right.
they're not ready for, that level or whatever it is.
Right.
I think that having somebody to talk about that and not be afraid
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
express what's going on. Cause I know a lot of times as, the athletes, we're just, we have all these feelings that we just bottle up and we just keep going. And then
Yep.
later on we pay
Mhm.
for it, with
Yep.
our mental health. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I started Next Level Ready, like, gosh, 6 or 7 months ago. So this is
Mhm.
all, as a typical entrepreneur, like seeing what my background's in, what I enjoy, coaching on, and how I can help. And my whole goal is to, make a positive impact on the world of college sports through life coaching, and mental work, and giving athletes the tools and skills that they're going to need to maintain their success, and be happy athletes.
Yeah.
So that's my whole goal. And I think it's just kind of figuring out, like, where does that fit, and where is there a need, and who do I get fired up about helping?
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
I wish you were around when I was going through all this.
Well, you do. You do.
That's why we're here now, right?
It's just like working
Providing.
at a finance place going, what am I doing with my life?
Oh man. And so where could our listeners get connected with you if they're interested in connecting or hearing more about your
Yeah.
program?
So I'm mostly on Instagram at nextlevel.ready. And I share a lot of, recruiting tips, tricks, things like that, a lot of mindset stuff. You'll get to get a good feel for how I teach mindset and what I believe in regards to that. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, Susan Forbes. And I have a website too. It's benextlevelready.com, benextlevelready.com. So it's all kind of, under the same theme of being ready for that next level life, and preparing, getting yourself prepared. And if you're already there, helping you learn how to navigate it.
That's perfect. I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes for people. And, you guys, if you are interested in connecting with Susan, she's a great person to talk to. And I enjoy connecting with you this year. And we
Yeah, you
learned
too.
that we have so much in common,
Yes.
besides competing against one another a long time ago. We'll have to, I don't know, we'll have to go back and see if there's tape somewhere.
I know,
Some
I
footage.
can't find any, like, I don't even know how to get my hands on any film of me playing. I'm like, wait, I like, all that is such a blur. I'm like, was I even good? I don't remember.
Oh man, such a long time ago.
But
I
no,
know.
I
I think they
actually,
started archiving stuff after we left, so we
yeah,
may have missed the cutoff.
I think we literally would need to find the VHS. I
Yeah.
don't know how else to do it.
Oh, too funny. Well,
Yeah.
I've got one more question for you before we
Sure.
wrap up. This is something I'm going to be asking all my guests this season, but what is something surprising that you've learned about yourself since you left the game?
Oh, something surprising I've learned about
Mhm.
myself since I left the game. Oh, that is such a good question. Man, I mean, what's coming up is just being being okay with who I am and who I'm becoming. You know, I think that as an athlete and you know, as who being someone who's a very driven person and placing a lot of expectations on themselves that um it's okay for things not necessarily to look like how you thought they were going to look, and that it's okay to morph and change and become someone that might be different than what you originally were thinking it would be. So, I mean, I'm even thinking like my time as a mom, right? Thinking like I want to do and be and, you know, become this kind of parent, and now being like, it's actually okay for me to also want to have a career for myself, and
Mhm.
kind of learning that it's not, there's never really a destination, I guess, I think is what I've been surprised to learn is as an athlete who was always reaching that next thing, and that now as an adult and an entrepreneur and a parent, there is no there is no this is the ending point. It's this is kind of the journey, there's different, I think, defining points along that journey, but there's not one moment that gives you, you know, that satisfaction that you've been looking for, or that you know, or one moment where you think you're finally gonna step into that person who you want to be. I think it's an ongoing process. So um, I'd say I'm surprised that it's never over. I've never got the golden nugget somehow.
Never fully satisfied, always
Never
going for the
fully
next thing.
satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's
But
so
also
perfect.
learning to be, you know, be content in that like
Mhm.
it's never going to be completely over and done, I think, until we, you know, are put in the earth. So being content with the journey and that process, and that it might not look how I think it's going to look.
Mhm. Yeah, continuously evolving. And
Hmm. Yeah.
even, Susan from, the last whistle of your last game to now, like,
Yeah.
imagine how much has changed, in that
Yeah.
process, and you're
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
striving, every single day. So
Thank you.
that's
Appreciate
great.
you too.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to hearing what's to come with all your programs and offerings, and continue doing the great work, because what you're doing right now is amazing and it's completely needed for athletes. So thank you
I
so much.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. You
Yeah,
too.
thank you.
Thanks for an
All right, you
opportunity to
guys.
come on.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Rebranded Athlete podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, just like today, as Susan brought the fire for this episode. And make sure that you leave us a review as well on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it to continue helping to grow this podcast, because again, we are here to provide value for athletes everywhere. This is something that I know Susan and I would have loved to have back in the day when we were playing and transitioning into life after sports. And as always, if you need anything, feel free to reach out. You can visit my website, rebrandedathlete.com. I've got a lot of resources on there for you, replays of all of our episodes, and also services revolving athlete transition and coaching. And be sure to tune in live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I'll be back again next week. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.